from the beautiful kingdom of Ndongo. She is the daughter of Ndambe Kalonji, the Angola of this land. Angola in her language means ruler or leader. Her mother's name is Kanjula, and as a child, Kanjula was stolen from her village by the Mbundu people and made a slave. She is now what one would call a Jaga. The word Jaga means outsider, and because of this, Nzingha's father could not take Kanjula as his first wife, as this was not the custom, and the elders would never have allowed such a thing. Kanjula has 3 daughters, Nzingha, Makambu, and Kafunji, and they have a half-brother named Mbandi, born to their father's first wife. This is her story, Nzingha, the great warrior of Angola. When Nzingha was born, her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck. This was considered a sign of good luck amongst the people of her village, and in their native tongue was called Kujinga, which means to twist and turn. As a baby, her parents took her to be blessed by an old wise woman. Now, this old woman was said to have magical powers and could see into the future. In her vision, the old woman saw a grown Nzingha standing in a field of corn, and as the wind rushed through the crop, each cornstalk gently bent until they were all pointing in the same direction towards Nzingha. She stood defiant, with strength and determination in her eyes. The old woman told Kanjula and the king that one day Nzingha would be ruler of the Mbundu kingdom. Her mother found it hard to believe such words. After all, she had given birth to a girl and not a boy child. Her father, on the other hand, just smiled and nodded his head in approval. The Portuguese arrived on the shores of the kingdom of Ndongo. They invaded this beautiful land. Their intentions were to destroy and uproot everything that came in their way. But Nzingha's father was a wise and strong king. He would drive them back into the sea. As the men were preparing for battle, Nzingha watched her father from afar. She was 12 years old now and almost a woman. She would soon walk her rite of passage, as that was the tradition of all the young women in the Mbundu kingdom, once they turned 13. She wanted to make her father very, very proud. So she promised to keep a watchful eye over her family until his return. And even though Nzingha's mother was a strong and fearless woman, after all, she was the wife of a king. Nzingha could see the worry and sadness in her mother's eyes each time her father went off into battle. She was also worried, but she dared not tell anyone. She was soon to become a woman and had to be brave and strong like her parents. She prayed to the ancestors to bring him and all the warriors home safely. Many moons passed, and still her father had not returned. As Nzingha sat daydreaming in the shade under a mango tree, she imagined herself fighting alongside him in battle. While strolling by, Kanjula noticed her daughter deep in thought. Her mother sat quietly beside her, and it took a few moments before Nzingha realized she was there.
Your father is a very brave man. He has fought against the Portuguese many times before, and he always wins. Do not be afraid. The ancestors will protect him.
I am not afraid, Mother.
Then why are you sitting here watching your brother and sister attend classes instead of being over there learning with them?
Nzingha fired a harsh look directly at her mother.
You know I do not trust that priest.
Why must you use such words?
Her mother asked, but Nzingha remained silent.
Do you know how Priest Giovanni came to live in our village?
I do not care, Mother.
Her mother repeated the question again.
Nzingha, do you know the story of how he came to live here?
This time the answer was a sharp,
Yes, Mother. I've heard this story many times before.
Then enlighten me, my child.
her mother said softly. Nzingha never once saw or heard her mother angry. She was always so calm and so beautiful. She could now see why her father loved her mother so much. She did not want to repeat the story, but she felt ashamed for the way she had responded to her mother, so she honored the request. She made a loud sigh and reluctantly began.
When I was a baby, Father went to war with the Portuguese for the first time. He slaughtered them all with the exception of Priest Giovanni.
Nzingha picked up a stick and pointed it towards Priest Giovanni's hut.
That priest saved many of our peoples from boarding the big ships, which would have led to their deaths, so Father spared him. The Portuguese wanted to take Priest Giovanni's life when they found out what he was doing, but instead Father gave him refuge amongst our people. And in return, Priest Giovanni would teach Father the ways of the white man. Although he teaches all of us how to read and write in the enemy's tongue, and is a good servant to the king, I do not trust him. Father even allows him to come and go as he pleases. How can you trust the enemy? He could appear like a thief in the night and kill us all as we sleep. Or even worse, allow us to be taken away on the big ships across the wide open sea, never to see our homeland again. Mother, please, I do not want to learn from him. He could be a spy.
With laughter in her voice, Nzingha's mother replied,
You have such a wild imagination, my child. How is it possible for him to communicate with the Portuguese when they themselves want his head on a platter? This is home now.
Ah, that's what he told Father. But Mother, how do you know what he says is true?
The Portuguese are far to the north. That is a great distance from here. You and your sister must learn Priest Giovanni's ways, as it will prove to be of great importance one day. He is an honorable man.
and with that, Candula stood up and walked away smiling. Nzingha would often hear the quiet voices of the ancestors as they guided her.
Why is it so hard for everyone to see what I see?
Nzingha whispered quietly to herself. All of a sudden, she heard her sisters Kafunji and Makambu calling out her name as they ran towards her.
Nzingha! Nzingha!
Exhausted, they both fell down next to her under the mango tree.
We missed you at class today.
Kafunji spoke with innocence in her voice. She was a soft and gentle soul, loved by everyone she came in contact with. Makambu, on the other hand, was not at all happy with her sister.
Where were you this time?
Makambu was very outspoken. She noticed everything and challenged Nzingha every given chance. Nzingha quickly snapped.
I had business to take care of. I was busy and unable to attend. Besides, I am a princess, and that priest is only a servant.
I see the way you look at him and the way you act towards him. Just admit it, Nzingha, you don't like Father Giovanni. Neither do you trust him.
Nzingha sprung to her feet. With fire in her eyes, she shouted.
What did you just call him?
Kafunji stood trembling, stuttering nervously to repeat her sister's words.
She called him Father Giovanni.
Nzingha glared at both of them, and with great anger and disgust in her voice, she spat.
How dare you refer to the enemy as father? We only have one father, and he is in Angola of this land.
Almost on the verge of tears, Kafunji replied.
But the priest told us to call him Father Giovanni. He said that is the name you call a priest.
Nzingha became even more enraged and yelled at the top of her lungs.
I do not care what he told you to call him. We have only one father, and when he returns, I will make him aware of what this priest is trying to do. You must never refer to him by that title ever again. Do you hear me?
Both sisters nodded slowly, and with shame and embarrassment promised never to call Priest Giovanni father again. Still upset, Nzingha decided to take a long walk to clear her head. While on her journey, she noticed her brother Mbandi playing with his friends. Feeling a little mischievous, Nzingha shouted over to him.
Hey, Mbandi, let's race.
Mbandi shouted back.
No, I'm busy.
Busy doing what?
She shouted in a teasing tone.
Are you afraid I will beat you? If you are to be the future king, surely you are not afraid of racing a girl, are you?
Mbandi's friends all began to giggle. She had embarrassed him in front of everyone. Suddenly, Mbandi's mother appeared from her hut.
Just ignore her, my son. One day you will be the king and Nzingha will have to take orders from you.
As Nzingha continued walking, while kicking a stone laying on the ground in front of her, she mumbled under her breath.
I will never take orders from him. He's so slow. A turtle could outrun him.
At that very moment, Kufunji came running
Nzingha, come quick, come quick.
while pulling on her sister's arm.
They're back.
Who's back? What are you talking about?
Father's back, silly. Where's your head?
Both sisters excitedly began running towards the crowd of villagers welcoming home their warriors. Kufunji pointed.
There he is. Father, father.
She began screaming above the crowd, trying to get his attention. They both began waving their arms, but the king was unable to see either of his daughters through the thick crowd of villagers. Nzingha watched with great happiness and relief that her father had returned safely. She was proud to be the daughter of the king. The king raised his right hand, holding his spear high, and all the warriors came to a halt. Silence fell over the entire village. He then proceeded to his mother. He bowed down to her feet to show respect and love, and then he took his rightful place beside her. As the sisters began to push their way to the front, the king shouted out in a thunderous roar.
Where is my son, the future king?
Mbandi marched boastfully with a big grin on his face, and he took his rightful place clumsily next to his father. Nzingha thought to herself,
It's just not fair. I'm stronger, smarter, and faster than him. He looks like a firstborn grasshopper. I should step on him and squish him like a bug that he is.
Later that evening, the king gathered all of his children in the royal hut after the welcoming home ceremony. He signaled to Nzingha to approach him first.
Well?
He asked in a deep, commanding voice.
See, father? I told you I would take care of my sisters and mother. And look, I did.
The king smiled.
All my beautiful daughters, you are a blessing from the ancestors.
Nzingha whispered in her father's ear.
Me too?
The king leaned forward and whispered back.
Especially you.
Nzingha could not hide her smile as she walked back towards her other siblings. Words could not describe how happy her father made her feel inside. It was early in the morning, and most of the village was fast asleep. Nzingha waited patiently outside her father's hut. As he emerged from his slumber, she quickly approached him.
Father, this could not wait.
Go ahead, my child. I am listening. You look very concerned.
They began to walk.
That priest Giovanni told Kufunji Mukambu to call him Father Giovanni. Can you believe the nerve of that traitor? He wants them to call him Father? We only have one father, and that is you, Ndambi, Kolonji, Angola of this kingdom.
The king paused, and with a slight laughter in his tone, he replied,
Nzingha. That is the name they used when referring to a priest. He means no harm. Is this the reason why you do not attend classes? Your mother told me, and I was very disappointed to hear this.
With a slight annoyance in her voice, Nzingha stopped walking.
Father, this is serious. How can you think this is funny?
I am not laughing at you. I understand you do not trust the priest, and you want to protect me. But I promise you, Nzingha, all is well. Do not fear. I will have a talk with the priest. Now, will you go to your classes? You are the eldest child, so you must set a good example for your sisters. Do you hear me?
With a quiet,
Yes, Father.
Nzingha lowered her gaze towards the ground and shrugged both her shoulders. While in the royal hut, Nzingha sat quietly while her mother spoke about her rite of passage. Nzingha knew she was soon to become a woman and would have to marry and take a husband, as that was the custom. But she did not want to give up her hunting, making spears, and playing with her best friend Adu. Her mother was so excited with all the preparations that she didn't even notice the sad look on Nzinga's face. Before Nzinga realized what she was about to say, she groaned.
I wish this day would never come. Why must I be the eldest?
Nzinga's mother slowly turned around.
Why are you being so foolish? This will be a beautiful celebration.
But Mother, I'm not ready to become a woman and take on such responsibilities. I do not want to attend this celebration.
Nzinga, it is normal to feel nervous at first, but you'll be fine. I promise.
As Nzinga left the hut, head hanging low, walking slowly, staring down at her feet, her sister suddenly walked up behind her.
Why are you so sad?
She's sad because she doesn't want to walk the rite of passage and become a woman.
Nzinga stopped dead in her tracks. And looking up,
How do you know what I'm thinking?
at that very moment, little Kafunji interrupted.
But everyone always looks so pretty in their bright outfits dancing to the music. I would be happy if it was my celebration.
She began twirling around and dancing, listening to imaginary music. Nzinga barked
Why don't you do it then?
You know I'm too young.
as she continued twirling around and dancing to imaginary music in her head. Kafunji's happy feelings soon disappeared when she heard Makambu say,
She wants to marry Ado. That's why she's so upset.
Before saying another word, Nzinga took a moment to look around to make sure no one else was listening to their conversation. And trying to speak very discreetly, she replied,
You better be quiet.
Or else what? What will you do? You think I do not notice when you sneak off and go hunting with him? Imagine if our father knew where you were. What do you think the king would say?
I am warning you, Makambu. You better be quiet.
Kafunji yelled
Stop it! Stop
and
it!
placed both hands over her ears. Nzinga and Makambu soon realized the effect their arguing was having on their youngest sister. Makambu wrapped her arm around Nzinga's shoulder, and Nzinga did the same,
We were only playing.
replied both sisters.
Well, I don't like those kind of games.
Kafunji replied back and sniffled.
Come on, let's go to class.
Nzinga spoke softly. As all three sisters walked down the dusty path towards school, they noticed Adu leaning against a tree. Makambu gave Nzinga an intense stare.
You're going to miss classes again, aren't you?
I'll be right back.
Smiled Nzinga.
Just make up some kind of an excuse for me, please.
Nzinga knew she could trust both her sisters to keep her secret.
Nzinga, come. I have something to show you.
Adu said, leading her away from the path.
Show me what?
Trust me, you will like what you see.
Adu led Nzinga by the hand, and they disappeared into the woods. Once they had reached their destination, Adu pointed to a wild pig feeding on rotting fruits under a tree. When Nzinga saw the pig, she became so excited. She whispered to Adu,
Where is my spear?
I hid it under those branches so no one could see.
As Nzinga walked over to claim her prized weapon, Adu said,
I knew you would rather be here than in class.
smiling. Nzinga replied,
You know me well.
As she was about to pick up her weapon, the pig came charging towards her. A piercing sound was heard coming from the direction of the princess.
Nzinga, look out!
Adu yelled with fear in his voice. Adu ran quickly over to her.
Are you all right?
Struggling to stand and brushing herself off, Nzinga
I'm
replied,
fine.
That was a close call. Maybe this is a sign from the ancestors that this is not a good day to hunt.
Maybe you are right.
She knew it was the ancestors as they wrapped their arms around her and pulled her to safety. Nzinga sat down on the grass, fell flat on her back, looking up at the bright blue sky. Adu laid next to her.
May I say something, Princess Nzinga?
Why do you call me princess?
Because it is who you are. And very soon, you will walk your rite of passage and you will have to take a husband. And once that happens, you won't be able to do things like this with me anymore.
How do you know I will take a husband?
Everyone in the village is talking about the big celebration. After all, you are a princess.
I wish I could stay here with you forever. I wish I could marry you, Adu. You are the best friend any princess could ever have.
You know that's impossible. My family is not from royal blood, and your father would banish me from this village if he heard such talk.
Whoever my father chooses to be my husband, just know I will always be thinking of you.
We had better get back before someone notices us missing.
Thank you for being such a good friend.
Nzingha gave Adu a hug, and for a moment she thought they would never let go of each other. Back in the classroom, just as Priest Giovanni was about to ask the sisters where Nzingha was, she came crashing into the room, collapsing on her stool, almost out of breath.
Aha! Good afternoon, Princess Nzingha. I'm very glad you decided to join us.
Looking right at the priest, Nzingha frowned and asked,
Why do we have to learn this stupid language anyway? It's a waste of time.
The priest replied,
It will be of some use to you someday, believe me.
I'm sure you're not teaching us because you like us. You're just afraid of my father, the king.
Piccola mia, one day you will understand. You are only a child right now.
springing from her stool like a lion about to attack its prey. A very angry Nzingha hollered,
How dare you call me a child? I am not a child. And how will this foolish class benefit me? I live here. This is Kingdom of Ndongo, and this is not your land. I would never step foot on your land.
Trying to calm her down, the priest agreed with Nzingha.
Princess, you are right. But suppose the Portuguese catch you. Isn't it better for you know their language?
Still with rage in her tone, she answered,
My father, the king, is a great warrior. He would kill them before they could take me.
Princess Nzingha, please forgive me. I did not mean to offend you. But all I'm trying to say is that it would be to your advantage to learn these lessons like Mbandi and your sisters.
Nzingha replied,
If that be the case, Mbandi can take my place. He needs all the help he can get.
An uncomfortable silence hung in the air,
This is all for today, children.
said Priest Giovanni as he closed his book. Alone in the hut, the three sisters sat talking.
Why do you give the priest such a hard time?
I do not like him. With those beady blue eyes and that pale white skin. He is our enemy. He sneaks off into the night, and no one knows where he really goes or what he does. I do not trust him.
You are always so suspicious of everyone.
I can't help it. That is just the way I am.
Kafunji sat quietly in the corner of the room, listening to every word her sisters had to say.
But if the priest doesn't teach us the enemy's way, who will? After all, we are girls and not boys.
All it means, my little innocent sister, is that this priest has you all fooled.
Nzingha then proceeded to pat her youngest sister gently on the head. Kafunji playfully rose to her feet and, raising her right hand high in the air, shouted,
One day, you will be queen and protect all of the people of the Mbundu kingdom from all of our enemies.
How can I be queen when Mbandi is set to take the throne?
Makamba rose to her feet.
Do not forget the old woman's vision.
Do you really think I could be the ruler of the Mbundu kingdom?
Nzingha had this far-off look in her eyes.
You can be anything you want to be, Princess Nzingha.
All three sisters stood together and raised their right hands and began twirling in a circle.
And we will be your trusted advisors, fighting alongside you in battle.
And then they all began to giggle.
I heard something.
Silence fell over the group, and together they all crept slowly to the window. And when they looked out, they saw Mbandi crouched down on both knees, hiding. As he looked up, he saw all three sisters staring down, looking right at him. Just as he was about to try and make a run for it, Makamba reached out and grabbed him by the arm, pulling his body closer to them. He put up a struggle, but he was unable to break free.
What did you hear?
Interrogated Nzingha.
I didn't hear anything.
He sounded nervous.
I don't believe you.
I swear to the ancestors, I didn't hear anything.
If I find you are lying to me, I will feed you to the lions. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Nzingha nodded to Makambu. Makambu then released Mbandi from her grip. As he whimpered away, their plump brother whispered with a slight grin and a cocky facial expression.
That old woman's vision will never come to pass. I will make sure of it.
The day had finally arrived for Nzingha to walk her rite of passage and take a husband. She sat quietly as her mother finished up all the final touches before the ceremony. When Kafunji saw her sister, she ran over to her and began touching her hair, exclaiming how beautiful she looked. At that very moment, Nzingha's mother gently shooed her away.
You'll mess up your sister's hair. Now go. She'll be out soon.
Mother, father is calling you.
That's funny. I didn't hear anything.
As she stopped what she was doing, Makambu turned to Kafunji.
Didn't you hear father calling mother?
I
Makambu
didn't.
kicked Kafunji on her foot.
Ouch!
Hobbling, she looked up at her sister. Makambu winked at her. Kafunji then understood that her sister was up to something, so she went along.
Yes, Mother. I heard Father calling you.
As their mother exited the room, Makambu turned and whispered in Nzingha's ear.
There's someone waiting outside to see you.
Nzingha dragged herself outside, and when she saw who was standing there, her sadness turned to joy.
What are you doing here?
I had to see you one last time.
They hugged, and Ado took a step back to take one final look at his best friend before she was to become a woman.
You are truly beautiful, Nzingha.
Thank you, Ado.
Don't be sad. You are about to be a woman and marry a prince. You should be happy.
Then why do I not feel happy? Instead, I feel sadness inside.
We will always be friends, but this is your path, Princess Nzingha. You must walk it with pride. You will always be dear to my heart.
Ado kissed her on the forehead, then added,
Goodbye, my friend.
When Nzingha came back into the room, her mood had changed. She seemed more cheery,
I hope that helped.
smiled Makambu.
It did. Thank you, my sister.
Hey, what about me?
Thank you, Kifunji.
You're welcome.
Their mother suddenly appeared.
That's odd. Your father said he was not calling me.
With a sly look on her face, Makambu replied,
I'm sure I heard him. Oh well, I guess I was only hearing things.
Their mother stood there for a second, both hands on her hips.
What are you girls up to?
All three sisters responded.
Nothing?
It's time to go.
Makambu extended her arm and directed the way.
After you, my beautiful sister.
With a tear in her eye and joy in her heart, looking at Nzingha, their mother declared,
You are so beautiful. You make your father, your sister, and me very proud.